So we're looking at another aspect of antigen antibody reactions. So here we are just trying to define the concept. If they say a reaction is a primary binding test, what do they mean? If they say a reaction is a secondary binding test, what do they actually mean? Alright, basically we are trying to identify the differences. Alright, if you are talking about this in the context of what? Antigen antibody reaction. So what we have here is this. Primary binding tests are tests that directly measure the binding of antigen and antibody. That is, they directly measure or visualize the immune complex. Do you understand? It's just directly. So they are the most sensitive techniques in terms of the amount of detectable antigen or antibodies. Examples of primary binding tests include things like what? The enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. Alright. Then we also have the radioimmunoassays. Then we have the Western blots, which all of them have already made single videos on them already. Okay, so here we are just trying to talk about possible classifications that you have them. So primary binding tests are performed by allowing antigens and antibody to combine directly. You understand? Then you want to measure and visualize the amount of immune complex that was formed, or probably if they now combine, there will be color changes, all those stuff. All right, so it is usual to use what radioisotopes, fluorescent dyes, and enzymes as labels to identify one of the reactants and all of that. Then for secondary binding tests, now there are tests that dictate and measure the consequence. Do you understand? So the whole thing is, okay, if an antigen and antibody eventually interact or react, what would they cause? What would be the consequence? So in the secondary binding test, you are trying to measure the consequence. That's the secondary effects of an antigen antibody reaction. So these consequences could include things like what? Precipitation of soluble antigens, clumping, that's agglutination of particulate antigens. Or sometimes there could be neutralization of bacteria, viruses, and toxins. Sometimes there could be activation of the complement system. So they are usually less sensitive than the primary binding test, but may be easily done. Okay, so that one you're not really looking at the clumping that usually comes up, the agglutination that usually comes up. All right, you are basically trying to, you're actually looking at that though. Do you understand? But this one, you're trying to the primary one, you're trying to visualize the concept, the complex and everything. While for the secondary one, you're just trying to look at the effects. All right, you're trying to look at the effects more. Okay, so that's just it between the differences between primary binding tests and secondary binding tests as related to antigen antibody reactions.